Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here with Hector Saenz talking about filing income tax returns. And Hector is with Liberty Tax Services. He has 3 locations here in San Antonio. Why don't you mention those again?
Yeah. So my locations, again, 2 on the south side of town, right? So it's 2303 Southwest Military Drive, right across from South Park Mall. 1 right around the corner, Sachimota, Nogalitos, and then 1 on the northwest part of town, over on Babcock and Huebner. But of course, we have Liberty Taxes all across the state of Texas, right? Everywhere here in San Antonio. All up to speed, very knowledgeable franchisees and staff members. So any Liberty office really can help out, right? So, so that's where we're at.
Great. Okay, we've been talking about non-refundable tax credits, refundable tax credits. We talked about the standard deduction and itemized deductions. I wanted to talk a little bit about the processing industry, the filing industry that you're a part of, all the different ways that somebody could file. What are some of the pitfalls that you see that you would like to help prevent? When can somebody do this themselves? When should they seek a professional? And what are the different types of professionals?
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? Because now we're in the day and age where there's a lot of technology, right? AI technology, DIY stuff you can do on the internet, right? And so a lot of people, they avoid trying to find the professional, and a lot of times because of the fee, right? It's understandable, right? But at the same time, you're dealing with a federal document. Yeah. Right. This is what I kind of explain to some of our clients, especially when they come in for us to review and fix some of the issues that they run into. But they're dealing with a federal document, and so they assume that, hey, it seems easy enough, right? I mean, all they're doing is punching some buttons and, getting me some results. But, we've had years of training to know exactly which buttons to push. Yeah. Right.
Well, we've been talking about all the questions that you have to ask.
Yeah. And so, if you're not well versed with the tax law, then, and you have a pretty complex return, we're talking about beyond just the W-2, right? We're talking about maybe a small business, maybe you dip into rental real estate.
See a lot of that.
You dip into maybe some day trading or stock trading here and there. It can get tricky, and if you push the wrong button on those DIY systems, you can be getting this big old refund. You're like, hey, this is great, right? I should have been doing this a long time ago. But then you get the letter, right? You get the letter from the IRS like, hey, you took a credit you weren't supposed to, and now you're in trouble.
And
right?
so it typically happens like that. They won't find out until later that they made a mistake.
Yeah, and so, the IRS, it could take them some time, right? Sometimes within the same year, right? So, but 3 to 5 years, right? 3 to 5 years out, they can kind of look into this. If they find a consistent pattern, right? Or like, let's say it's you taking the same wrong tax credit every year, they find that pattern, they'll go even further back, right? And so that can add up to be quite a bit, right?
Wow.
Yeah, can add to be quite a bit. And so, along with the other things that are out there, I mean, obviously we get into a pinch like that, then at that point we have to amend returns, fix them, and then even, seek tax resolution, right? So we'll either find a tax attorney or someone that can help to kind of resolve some of those issues there. But it's no joke, right? I mean, if you have a more complex tax return beyond just a simple W-2 with no, and you don't qualify for any deductions or tax credits, then yeah, maybe some online software will help you out, right? But aside from that, anything beyond that, you want to make sure you're finding a professional so that you can maximize your deductions.
Right. Well, there's the opposite scenario where you're not claiming enough benefits under the code because you don't know. And that might cost you some money to hire a professional, but it might be worth a whole lot more.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, and yeah, you're exactly right. So, And that has happened, right? I mean, we'll have clients that come in and they're like, hey, this is my refund's a little more than last year. What's the difference? We'll kind of explain to them. Like I said, every tax return will explain to them what's going on. They're like, hey, they didn't tell me that last year, right? Or I didn't know about that. And so that allows us to give them the opportunity to kind of amend prior year returns, allow us to review them and catch those credits that they didn't catch when they did it on their own.
And so you can even do a second opinion.
Absolutely, yeah. So every one of our offices will do a free review, and if we do catch any inconsistencies or anything that they could have taken, right, as far as deductions and credits, then we'll offer it to them, right, to make the change for them.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I ran into this article about this House Republican that filed a lawsuit against Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. And that wasn't the reason that I wanted to bring up this issue. I wanted to bring up the issue of discharge of a loan as income on your return.
Yeah.
And sort of that's what this lawsuit is about. It's so new, there's not a copy of the lawsuit posted anywhere yet, so that's why I didn't want to talk about it. But I thought we could talk about Section 108, discharge of a loan as income.
Yeah.
One of those things that might surprise somebody.
For sure. Yeah, like you mentioned a while ago, right? You might miss something. And so that happens, right? That's one of the things that people commonly miss is it's called cancellation of debt, right? So, for example, this is how I explain it to my students sometimes when they come in through my tax class. Let's say it's Christmas time, right? You rack up the credit card expenses, and then during the year it gets tough to pay it, right? So let's say that your balance is $5,000. You go down the line and get the nasty calls, right? The collection calls and all that. Finally, they say, okay, well, how much can you pay? Well, I can pay $2,000. Great. Let's pay the $2,000. Debt's forgiven, right? Well, kind of.
Yeah.
The $3,000 remaining it's what's considered cancellation of debt. Now becomes income to you because you had it, right? You spent it, right? It was in your possession. You spent it, so now that's income to you, and that's income you have to report on your tax return as income, right? And taxable income. And so if you don't put it in, right, because you thought it was canceled, right? You thought it was canceled, so you just ignored it, left it alone. A few years down the line, 1, 2, 3 years later, you're going to get that letter say, hey, you forgot to put, or you failed to put, not forgotten, right? That you failed.
Yeah.
You failed to put your $3,000 income. This resulted in an increase in your tax liability, right? Now you owe X amount plus interest and penalties.
Because the credit card company is going to send something to the IRS to let them know that they canceled that debt.
Right. Yeah, so if you get that cancellation of debt form, don't ignore it, right? It's an important tax form. You do have to bring it in to add that as income on your tax return. Yeah. Like I said, a lot of people just ignore it because they assume that it's forgiven, right? I can ignore it now. But that's not the case. Yeah.
Every time you come in here, I'm always asking you about what's new. So this time I wanted to ask you, what never changes?
What never changes is that you have to file a tax return, right? Death and taxes is never changing, right? But aside from that, it's just the same way we get taxed, right? You got your income, taxable income, non-taxable income. A lot of that stuff is the same. Things just kind of change for inflation. Aside from that, like I said, that's really what it is, right?
How about any scams going on with taxes?
Quite a few right now, right? Especially with the pandemic kind of behind us, and we're running into that deadline of the 3 years of being able to get some of these stimulus deals, right? And so people, I would call them scam artists, right, are out there trying to say, hey, you can qualify for X amount of dollars, right, based on a stimulus. And so people fall for it and right, they pay the fee but never get the money, right?
Oh,
and so
okay.
That's one, promising that. Another thing is, this has been pretty common every year, but you'll get a phone call saying, hey, it's the IRS. You owe X amount of dollars. We need to settle this right now. And they'll go down this rabbit hole of having you go to get gift cards to pay your balance, right? For one thing, the IRS never makes phone calls, right? They're always going to send you a letter first. The only phone calls they'll make is if it's a direct phone call between you and the agent that's already working on your case. Aside from that, the initial call is always, or not call, but the initial contact is always by letter, by mail.
And they would never ask you to pay with a gift card.
Exactly. They'll never have you go down and pay with a gift card.
So for guys like us, that we know that doesn't make any sense, but they target elderly people that might not understand what's happening.
Yeah.
So maybe we should be asking our parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and neighbors, have you filed your taxes, or are you concerned about it? If somebody calls you, don't give them any information. Yeah,
absolutely, right? Because no matter if you're earning income, you have to file no matter what, right? Age is really not, there's no limit to that. It's important to make sure, your loved ones, right? The elderly folks, make sure that they're on top of that, so that, because if they do fall behind a year or two and then they get that phone call, they're going to get scared, right?
Yeah.
They're going to think it's true, right? But, like I said, the IRS never makes those phone calls.
I tell some people that the biggest thing you can do to protect your elderly family members and friends is to disconnect the phone.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's tough these days too, right? Because we get so many scam calls and robocalls and things like that, and unfortunately, the elderly folks are just can't even figure out how to use the phone, right?
Right.
It gets tough to really monitor that and all that, but
I wanted to say one thing about legacy before we close out.
And now, it's time for the Talk Law Radio Legacy Spotlight. What's your legacy? Sponsored by Marquardt Law Firm.
I was reading a devotional, and I saw this reference to Psalm 111, verse 3 and 4. It says, "He has caused his wondrous works to be remembered." And it just made me think God cares about his legacy. And there was a long Bible study that went along with it, but I just wanted to mention that to our listeners. If God cares about his legacy, we should care about our legacy. And a friend of mine said a while back that our legacy is the sum of all of our actions while we're alive.
Yep.
And so I have to close out the show, Hector. Thank you for joining me once again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you later.
Always fun. Yes, sir. Thank you.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.